On March 26, 1676, on the banks of the Blackstone River, nearly an entire company of Colonial soldiers was ambushed and annihilated. 9 survivors were tortured to death. Their bodies were buried under a pile of stones that still stands today, believed to be the oldest war memorial in the United States. The town across the river has almost no idea it exists. What war produced this burial site? And what produced the war? To answer that, we have to go back 14 years. To a deed, to a price, and to a people who had already lost almost everything before a single shot was fired. The river had a name before the English gave it one. The Nipmuc called it Canonchet. They called themselves the people of the fresh water, and they had lived in this valley for thousands of years, fishing salmon and lamprey from the river, farming the bottomland, living in autonomous villages across the interior of what is now central Massachusetts and northern Rhode Island. Their village near the river bend was called Wacontuck. The land around it, 64 square miles, was called Squinchepake. It was theirs. By the time the English arrived in the 1660s, the Nipmuc were already a people under pressure no map could show. Between 1616 and 1619, epidemic disease had killed an estimated 90% of the indigenous population of southern New England. Villages that once held hundreds held dozens. Sachems who once commanded vast territories now negotiated from a position of profound weakness, with no colonial court to appeal to, no legal mechanism to contest anything. In September 1662, 2 men from Braintree and Weymouth arrived with an offer. Their names were Moses Payne and Peter Brackett. 2 Nipmuc sachems, Great John and Quashamet, put their marks on a document. The price was goods valued at approximately 24 pounds sterling. What the English recorded as sold was 64 square miles of Nipmuc homeland. What Great John and Quashamet understood themselves to be giving away, whether they read this as a permanent transfer or as something more like a shared use arrangement inside a legal framework only one side controlled, we cannot know. The document records a transaction. It does not record what the Nipmuc believed. That gap is the moral fault line at the center of everything that came next. On May 15, 1667, the Colonial General Court incorporated the territory as the town of Mendon. 64 square miles of Nipmuc homeland was now, on paper, English property. Here is a name worth holding: William Blackstone. He had been the first European settler in the Blackstone River Valley, an Anglican clergyman who fled the Massachusetts Bay Colony to live alone on his farm near the river, with his books, his orchard, and for decades, his Nipmuc neighbors. He had a documented belief that indigenous people were the land's rightful owners, and that the only honest way to settle it was to purchase it from them directly. He died on May 26, 1675. Less than 7 weeks later, on July 14, 1675, the Nipmuc attacked the town of Mendon. They killed settlers, burned the mill, and struck the first blow of King Philip's War in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Here, in this corridor, on this land. This was not a raid born of desperation. The Nipmuc had joined a coalition assembled by Metacom, the Wampanoag leader the English called King Philip, who had watched the colonial legal machine absorb indigenous land across southern New England for 30 years and decided the only answer was war. They were not reacting, they were fighting back. Mendon was abandoned. William Blackstone's home and library burned in the fighting. The war spread. In December 1675, colonial forces attacked the fortified Narragansett village in Rhode Island and slaughtered approximately 600 men, women, and children in what became known as the Great Swamp Fight. The Narragansett had not yet formally joined Metacom's alliance. They joined immediately afterward. Here is what the history books leave out. While the fighting was still active, the Colonial General Court marched 500 Christian Nipmuc to Deer Island in Boston Harbor. These were not warriors. These were people who had converted to the colonial faith, who had done everything the system asked of them. The general court left them there through winter, a barren strip of land, almost no shelter, almost no food. More than half of them died. They had cooperated. It made no difference. Canonchet didn't charge Captain Pierce's column. He sent decoys. On the morning of March 26, 1676, Captain Michael Pierce marched from Rehoboth with 63 English militia and 20 Allied native soldiers, moving toward reported enemy forces near Study Hill. Canonchet, the Narragansett sachem commanding the coalition, had positioned hundreds of warriors in the terrain around a ravine near the Blackstone River. The decoys fell back, giving ground. Pierce's column followed them in, and then the force around them closed. The battle lasted several hours. 55 of Pierce's 63 English soldiers were killed. Most of the Allied native soldiers died with them. 9 prisoners were tortured to death. 1 man survived. English soldiers who came after built a cairn over the dead from stones gathered off the ground. We've been to this cairn before, at the opening of this documentary. Now you know everything it means. Captain Pierce left 11 children without a father. Canonchet didn't stumble into that ambush. He built it. But what came after the battle? That was built too. Carefully. Legally. By men who never fired a shot. The war ended on August 12th, 1676. Mendon was killed. Nipmuc men classified as hostile combatants were hanged, drawn, and quartered in Boston. Nipmuc women and children were sold into slavery, some shipped to Bermuda, some to the Caribbean. For the survivors still on the land, the General Court installed the guardian system. Surviving Nipmuc could not sell land, could not move freely, could not act in any legal capacity without approval from a colonial official. Meanwhile, the General Court continued allotting Nipmuc country as new English towns. The deed had been the first instrument, the war had been the second, the guardian system was the third. Together, they were not 3 separate events. They were one continuous act of dispossession, executed by the same institution across 30 years, using 3 different tools: law, military force, and bureaucracy. The Nipmuc had won the battle on this river. They lost the apparatus. The Hassanimisco band of the Nipmuc Nation is in Grafton, Massachusetts today. The Chobunagungumog band is in Webster. The Hassanimisco Reservation in Grafton has never left tribal ownership. Through the war, the guardian system, the industrial era, and the 20th century, the Nipmuc were not erased. They survived the deed, the executions, the slave ships, and Deer Island. The dispossession was enormous. It was not complete. The cairn at Cumberland Monastery is still there, continuously marked since 1676, believed to be the oldest war memorial in the United States. Across the water, the town of Blackstone, Massachusetts, named for the one colonist in this valley who believed the Nipmuc were the land's rightful owners, and who died before he could see that belief overridden by every institution that outlasted him. The deed question is still open. What Great John and Quashnet understood themselves to be signing in September 1662 has never been resolved. The answer changes the legal framing. It does not change what followed. The cairn is still there. The Nipmuc are still there. The river still runs between them and the town that carries his name. We're based about 20 minutes from this river. We drove past the Blackstone town sign for years without knowing any of this. That's the whole reason this channel exists. If you want to stay in this territory, same war, same river, same decade, the next story is close.